Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. My name is Mike Kanakis, and tonight we are going to be talking about another PowerShell best practice, securing your scripting environment. And before we get to tonight's speaker and what we're going to be talking about, I want to introduce my co-host. Hey, everybody, say hello to Phil Bossman. Hey, Phil, how's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm welcome, Mike. Thanks for having me.
First one of the new year, right? So how was the holiday for you?
Holiday was eventful. I did non-technical things. I was tearing apart drywall and fun stuff. So it was very refreshing to not do IT work for a while. But I'm ready. The New Year's has begun, so I'm ready to kick it and get it ready to go. So
Yeah,
it's exciting.
yeah, I agree. A little break in the action, but kind of excited and renewed to talk some PowerShell again. And so tonight we're talking about securing your scripting environment. Who's our speaker for this evening for tonight's talk?
Well, tonight we have our speaker is James Petty. He's a longtime contributing community member of PowerShell. He's a Microsoft MVP. He's a co-author of the recent edition of the PowerShell Month at Lunches book. And James, in his day job, is the director of IT for Text Request, and of course the CEO of the DevOps Collective, a nonprofit organization that oversees PowerShell.org. So if you've heard of that, and then if you've also heard that PowerShell Summit, and so he's really involved with the community. So welcome, James.
Yeah, where is he? He's got to turn his
I don't
video
know. He
back
dropped
on.
himself away.
Yeah,
I'm here.
there he is. Hello, hey James. How are
Welcome,
you?
James.
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, buddy. So, real quick, how was the holiday for you? Was it a quiet one?
It was pretty uneventful. So I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So the 3-year-old finally understood the concept of unwrapping presents. So she had to
Nice.
unwrap everybody's. And the 1-year-old, for anyone who has kids, bags. Don't wrap things. Put things in bags. It's a lot easier.
I gotcha.
Nice. So, James, what are we talking about tonight? I know I
Hey,
talked about it a little bit, but
yeah, we're going to be talking kind of brief, well, not briefly, a little bit in depth about some of the best practices that you can do in your environment to help make PowerShell not scary and help make your CISO happy.
awesome. And so, if the people watching at home are not regular Research Triangle PowerShell user group members, tell them a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, Phil summed it up rather well. So my day job is I'm the director of IT for Text Request, and then I also help run PowerShell.org and the DevOps Collective. Also, kind of the conference chair for the PowerShell Summit that's coming up April 8th through 11th. If you haven't got your ticket yet, I also teach at the local community college. Teach a PowerShell class and a Windows Server class. And in my free time, I guess I read books. I'm on
In
my
your free
second.
time, you don't have any because you have a 1 and 2-year-old.
Right. Well, I was gonna say in my free time I spend my time with the kids, but that's you know this is my free time because they're in bed right now.
So you're certainly a busy guy, but for those of you at home that are watching, James is definitely knowledgeable on the topic of PowerShell. We are happy to have him tonight. Before we get into talking about securing a scripting environment, why don't you take an opportunity just to let people know about the PowerShell Summit, how they can find out more information, and when that's coming up?
Yeah. So the PowerShell Summit's April 8th through the 11th. We're in Bellevue, Washington. It's right outside Seattle. I know. I think I put some stuff in the chat. So did Phil. You can go to PowerShellSummit.org. Uh, you just missed the early bird tickets. The tickets are $19.99, or just shy of 2,000 for the week. It's a 4-day event, and if you haven't seen the schedule, it is action packed. This is, I think, going to be one of the best summits we've had in a really long time as far as the quality of the content that we have. We had 220 submissions and only 55 speaking slots, so it was even the ones that didn't make the cut it was still really rough, or really hard to cut some of these amazing sessions.
I didn't make the cut. I'm
Phil
kidding.
did though.
Yeah.
It did.
For those at
Phil
home,
and Kevin, and I think Kevin is speaking for his first time as well.
yes, yes. So for those at home wondering what the PowerShell Summit is, it's a 4-day event, happens in Seattle, Washington, and it's the biggest and best event for PowerShell in the entire world. It happens, as I said, in the United States. It will have about 450 people as attendees. We'll have the best and brightest minds in the PowerShell community sharing knowledge about how they do things with PowerShell, showing you new techniques, teaching you different ideas about PowerShell and how you can use it better in your day job. And I can guarantee you, as being a member and involved with planning the event for the last couple of years, if you go, you're going to come home with a boatload of ideas about how you can do things better with PowerShell at work. So if you're interested, check out PowerShell.org for more information about the event. And that's what I have to say about that. So let's get back to what we're talking about. James, I want to turn it over to you. Looking forward to see what you got to present tonight. So if you want to take it away, go for it.
Absolutely. Let me go here. All right, let me mute all my notifications. Otherwise, Corey's going to blow my computer up. All right. Come on, you can do it. Oh no, where'd my PowerPoint go? All right, so like Mike said, if you have a question, just pop it in the chat, and if it doesn't get answered, someone else can kind of pipe up. When you're sharing your screen, you can't see the chat here. So like Mike said, we're going to be talking about PowerShell security and best practices. And Stevie, don't have an aneurysm. I only have 12 slides, so it'll be fine. All right, so this is my social media profile. I'm at PSJamesP on most of the social medias these days. Like Mike says, I'm a 4-time Microsoft MVP. I think I recently got moved to the Azure space now, but it's all for the work in PowerShell. Also the lead author for Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches, as well as the newest book that's going to hit the bookshelf, I think just in time for the summit at the beginning of April, to Learn PowerShell Scripting in a Month of Lunches, 2nd edition. That's in a meet now. If you can go grab it, it's only going to be on sale for a few weeks. And all the information for this presentation will be available here at this location right here. On GitHub is where a copy of this PowerPoint, as well as all of the script files that we'll be using. So a couple things that we need to kind of get out of the way first, and that is some of the nomenclature that we need to get around. Is that first off, there are 2 different versions of PowerShell running out in the wild. We have Windows PowerShell 5. Which is the latest release, 5.1. That's what comes shipped standard on all of your boxes. It's been that way since Windows 7. I think 2012 R2, I think, is when it started coming out with that one. Well, 2008, anyways, had a copy of it. So this is what you have on your Windows 10 and Windows 11 boxes, and it's built on the .NET framework. When we talk about PowerShell, notice there's the keyword there's Windows PowerShell and PowerShell. That's what we'll be talking about today. Everything we are going to talk about, with the exception of the last piece with remoting with SSH, will still work in PowerShell 5.1 just fine. But we're going to be using the latest version of PowerShell, which is 7.4, the latest version out. I actually have 7.3.6 installed because I was not going to update PowerShell 5 minutes before the presentation started, because me and the demo gods don't get along. So just want to make sure they're appeased. And for those who don't know, PowerShell 7 is built on the .NET Core framework, so it's a lot speedier in that sense. But it is a separate install. That's a whole different. We're not going to go into how to install that. So this is a slide. I want you to take a picture of the slide. I don't know. We don't have any QR codes here. So take a picture of the slide and send it to your CISO or your cybersecurity folks, or whoever are the ones that are telling you that you can't use PowerShell because PowerShell is bad. So here I have the chat open somewhere. Just a quick show of hands in the chat, how many of you actually have PowerShell turned off at work because PowerShell bad? I know that's happened to quite a few people. Bring this over here. Yeah, so I see a couple people with their hands up now. I know where I used to work. I used to work for the federal government, and our cybersecurity department tried to tell us we had to turn PowerShell off because remote execution PowerShell commands was a bad thing. But then we looked at them and we were like, but you're okay with SSH? they're like, yeah, that's different. But then they couldn't tell us how. Eventually ended up going all the way up to the CISO, and we were able to argue a case and to allow remote PowerShell. But what we're seeing is a lot of these cybersecurity folks who are coming out of these boot camps and out of these fly-by-night programs are as cybersecurity analysts, but they actually have no idea what they're doing. All they know is what their programs are spitting out at them, saying PowerShell bad. So when we're looking at PowerShell, we need to make sure we have two exclusions that we're kind of looking for. The first one is the PowerShell.exe. That's the process for Windows PowerShell, and then PWSH.exe is the PowerShell process that runs. So we want to make sure that we whitelist these processes so that we don't start sending off alerts to whatever kind of monitoring system or SIM solution you have. Now, what do PowerShell and Notepad have in common? And the answer to that is, along with Calculator, those are the three programs that are installed on every computer around the world, regardless of where regardless of where you buy your computer. Starting with Windows 7, I think Windows Vista had a copy, but starting with Windows 7 and up, PowerShell comes preloaded by default on all of your Windows machines. This is why the hackers the bad guys love to use PowerShell when they're doing their bad things. It's because they're already using a program that's already there. They don't have to bring their their Python or C++ libraries or whatever they're bringing. They don't have to bring all that extra code because it's already there, which in turn is why a lot of CISOs and cybersecurity analysts are so against PowerShell, is because it is so readily available and it is the number one attack vector that bad attackers use. But there's a couple of things that we can do to help mitigate these things, which is what we're going to be talking about. First and foremost, we need to understand that PowerShell security and all that good stuff, it's more of a defensive game. So if you like sports ball, there's offense and a defense. There's very few offensive strategies you can do to mitigate bad people doing bad things with PowerShell. Most of what we're going to talk about is set on the defensive side. Now, the few things that we can do is we have our security policies here. Or I'm sorry, these are security policies that we can set on the machines. 9 times out of 10, what comes by default out from Microsoft is perfectly fine. So these go from bottom to top, the most restrictive, from the least restricted to the most restrictive. So, but here we'll start at the top. So all sign means that any script that is being ran on the computer has to be signed with a Cosigning cert from a trusted publisher. We'll put a pin on that, and I'll tell you why I don't like this one personally. We're going to skip bypass because that's a whole nother issue. We'll come back to that one. So default sets what the default execution policy is by Microsoft. On Windows clients, it's set to restricted, and on Windows servers, it's going to be remote signed. So 9 times out of 10, those can be perfectly fine for what your security needs are. So remote sign requires that all scripts and files downloaded from the internet have to be code signed, but any scripts that you are sharing internally do not have to be signed by a code signing cert. Actually, if you're not aware, part of the metadata that comes from all these files is a location. And your computer knows if it's been downloaded from the internet or if it's been written on a machine and saved, passed around machine to machine without actually touching the internet. Restricted doesn't load configuration files or scripts, but they don't. Once you do run them, they do not have to be signed. Undefined has no execution policy set. And then unrestricted is what we use on Mac and Linux, and that is because Mac and Linux do not have a concept of security policies. So this was you won't have an unrestricted inside of Windows PowerShell. This is for a PowerShell cell 7 and up thing. Now, most of the time, I know I'm super guilty of this too. The first thing that you like to do is pop open a Windows or a PowerShell console and set execution. Oh, that's execution policies. Oops. Oh, yeah, let's talk about bypass for a minute. Security policies are great. And you're like, oh, I'm going to do all signed in my environment. Only people, only 3 or 4 of us are going to have code signing certs, and everything's going to be great and super secure until you see this little bypass thing right here. This means that I can bypass your security policy at any point in time as long as I have the appropriate rights to do so. So therefore, making your all signed security policy 100% useless. If you want to see a good example of this, go to the Chocolatey website and see how they install it. It said execution policy -bypass, and then it does all the goodies. Not that I'm picking on Chocolatey or anything. All right, so now once we have our policies here, we have some of the scopes that these policies can be applied to. Are you using? Yes, Jay, I'm mixing some terms up. These are execution policies, these are execution policies, not security policies. I'll fix that later. There we go. So don't be like me, and the first thing that you do whenever you get a new machine is set execution policy to undefined. Like, don't do that. Yes, I'm sorry. I was mixing up some terms. Execution policy, but all these are still the same. Right. If you set it with GPO, you can override it but GPO will come back within 90 minutes and reset it. Again, you can only set execution policy if you're an admin on the machine. Anyways, if you don't have local admin rights on your machine to grab that UAC access token, then you can't set your execution policy. So that's where the GPOs would come in. Now we're talking about security policies. This is where the execution policies are set up. So they can be at the local machine, which is kind of like think of your physical laptop. Your current user is the person who's actually logged in. The process, you can assign different processes, different security scopes. Yeah. And then the user policy is going to apply to all the users that are on the machine. To all the users that are on the machine, and the machine policy, again, everything that's going to be attached or everything that's running locally on that machine. Let's see here. Let's do this. All right, so I have a little mini lab here that we're going to set up. Just kind of show you a few things. Last couple times I've done this, I've been on my Mac, and I was using a Mac to remote into an Azure VM, and bad things were happening, especially when it came to zooming. Let's just go here. All right, so first thing we're just going to look at our execution policy here. So I have a Windows. This is a Windows 10. This is a Windows 11 machine. Set here remote signed, so we can see that. That's get execution policy. Whereas I can always set execution policy to to whatever I want, and I can also assign that we're using the scope parameter. So current user mean only. I'm logged in as Bob, so only Bob is the one that would be allowed to do that. You can't do. I'm not administrator. I think I would have that fixed. Anyways. Okay. I don't know what happened. I lost my start button. My start button disappeared over on my VM for some reason. All right, so that didn't run because I'm not running. I don't have that administration token. We can see that I don't have. It doesn't say administrator up here. And then, like I said, I don't have a start button anymore. Whatever. All right, so like I said, execution policy and security scopes are really the only two offensive strategies that we have when it comes to trying to protect PowerShell processes from running. Most likely, so what we're going to be doing is we look at defense, is we're going to have some kind of a SIM agent that's going to be looking for things. It's going to be looking for anomalies and sending that to a Splunk or log logic or some other type of program, programmer application that can do that. All right. So I know I got execution policy and security policies mixed up for a little bit. Does anybody have any questions on those two before we kind of move on? Yeah, I tried the Windows key, but it's using it on my local machine. So like this start menu right here is my local machine, and I don't know how to make it go away.
So James, what other scopes are available there for the set execution policy?
Yeah, so let's just look at that. Set execution policy. Do restricted. So the scopes that we have. So those are what we have here. So these are the scopes that we can set. So you're by default when you're logging in. If you just open up PowerShell, you are here at current user. Yeah. So you're here at the current user, and 99% of the time, this is kind of where you would be. So unless for some reason, I have seen like one edge case where someone actually used the process like to run a scheduled task that needed some kind of an elevation.
Well, so
Yeah, I think
it's interesting. What's the difference? Maybe you don't know this. I'm not sure. What's the difference between local machine and machine policy? I don't know that I've ever considered that.
I don't actually know what the difference is. Sean might, but I've tried to look at it a little bit, and I really, from what I've read, they look almost identical. Not to put Sean on the spot or anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Give me a moment.
Start Control Shift Home. Let me try that.
So,
Yep.
machine policy and user policy refer to group policy settings, and then process, current user, and local machine are local scopes on the machine. So there'll be HK current user and HK local machine, and then a process level scope. But so in the hierarchy of how these get applied, the machine policy is applied first, then the user policy, then process, then current user, then local machine.
So that's pretty interesting. So that means that you could set a different execution policy for the group policy settings and then have a separate one for the things outside of group policy, like just the local machine settings. I wonder if you could do that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think to answer Corey's question a little bit, you can set all these via GPO, but if you have the rights to be able to get this administration token, the UAC token, I can bypass any of your GPOs for up to 90 minutes. All right, so here we can see here, set execution policy. I set it to all signed here, and then now I can see that I'm all signed. If I were to try and run anything here, so we can see over here, I have a couple of scripts that are ran that are not signed. It's going to tell me a nice big red helpful error you cannot run the script on the current system because it is not digitally signed.
So why would I want to do that?
Well, so this is just James' opinion. So take that with, take it with 2 grains of salt. But unless you're going to be publicly sharing a module or a script with the outside world, like the PowerShell gallery, I think code signing certs are a complete waste of time. And the reason for that is, one, code signing certs only have a lifespan of up to 2 years, and they cannot be renewed. And so, which means anything you signed with that cert has to be re-signed at some point. And 2, you have to have a pre-existing PKI infrastructure. So you already like Steve said, if you're going to buy one publicly from, let's say, DigiCert, they are uber expensive, like well into the thousands of dollars. And then also, if you're going to do it internally, so you have to have that pre-existing PKI infrastructure. Most organizations are kind of starting to outsource that a little bit. So being able to actually have an internal CA is a really big pain in the rear end. And really, like I said, that's where you're gonna have to start weighing things like, what benefits is it actually going to get you? Because, like I said, if I have the rights, this is where I said it's more of a defensive game. If I have the rights, my local admin on the machine, to grab that UAC token, doesn't matter what your GPO policy is, I can always use bypass. That is why I think code signing certs is not a good idea for internal use. External use, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting something from a reputable source. DBA Tools, a fantastic example. So many people contribute to that. A lot of things going on. I'm downloading that from the internet. Yeah, I kind of want to make sure that hasn't been monkeyed with. If I'm working at a line and I want to send you a PowerShell script, I don't need to go through the trouble of signing it.
Interesting. I could see the flip side though, and I'm not saying this would be a perfect environment, but if you have a fairly sort of locked down environment, you could turn on all signed, and that's just some little speed bump to say someone can't bring in outside code. But
right.
I agree with you. It doesn't really have a huge security benefit that I can see.
My opinion, as far as some of the signing certificate things, is that that the code has not been modified. And so, hey, you have a repository and here's all this code and you're just blindly running it from this location. But now you know that nobody's written to this location and it hasn't changed. And so because the code is signed to that set of bits, that's the only value that I can see with signing code, is that, hey, what's in this location was validated at code, or it was never changed. This was kind of pushed out. So in your CI/CD, hey, you go through a thing and it signs the code, and you go, no, now it's gone through there, and nobody's gone and, hey, change some file in some random file share or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the only value that I see.
Yeah. So these are conversations you'll have to have internally, and to see what is the tolerance for monkeying with code. At some point, you have to trust your administrators, but at what point does that trust end? So, but I told you James's opinion. That is by no means written in stone anywhere. But
good discussion points, though.
All right. So moving on. So again, execution policy, security scopes. Those are the only two offensive strategies that we have. The next couple things we're going to talk about is more of the defensive strategies that we have. Well, I guess we'll talk about code signing certs a little bit. Here, so let's take a look. I lied. We're going to look at this just a little more. So here, just a very simple process, a very simple script. Get process, select first 10. First 10 processes that are running. Nothing special about it here. But what we can do, this is more sticking to my point, why code signing certs are a pain. Caveat, don't do this at home. I'm using a self-signed cert, which is a really bad thing, but I don't want to pay hundreds of dollars or $1,000 for a DigiCert. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a self-signed certificate here. that I'm going to use to sign a script with here. So here I just have a little function that's going to sign a script. This is where you would put this in your CI/CD pipeline. This is what you're going to do. Here, so we'll see we have a cert here, nice little thumbprint. You see it is a code signing cert. And so demo 1 and demo 2, here, let me open these up, are the same code, right? Get process, select first 10, get process, select first 10. But what we're looking at here is that I'm gonna now sign my demo 2. Well, I thought it was. All right. So this is what a signed script looks like. It puts a signature down here at the bottom, and what it's doing is using the file hash of the machine along with some of the metadata that it has, and it puts this nice little block down here. So if I go here, where did I go? So my execution policy here is still all signed. If I try to run demo 2 now, we can see because it's been signed. I signed it with a self-signed certificate, so it's not going to run because the chain's broken. But anyways, so this is what it would look like. And then anytime if I were to come and try to change this, let's say from 10 to 9, and when I save this, this signature here is now invalid because it used the hash from the file. So when you save it, the file hash changed. So this signature here is now invalid, and had my my certificate chain actually been working, that's what this unknown status area is, we would see that this would actually not run because the certificate is invalid. Actually, let me see if it'll still run. So let me see if we'll still get that error message. Yeah, so you notice different error message. Because remember, I changed it from 10 to 9. File hashes do not match in the stored signature. So this is where so if you're going to put this inside of a CI/CD pipeline, it's perfectly fine. If you're trying to remember to do this every single time without any kind of an automation tool, you need to rethink your automation pipeline here. Okay, now I'm for real done talking about execution policies and security policies. So the next bit that we're gonna do is, so that was the offense. So here's the defensive strategy that that you need to talk about, and I don't have any slides for this, if that's okay with everyone. Just to get a nice little. And that is probably my second favorite thing in PowerShell. That is set transcription. I thought it was set. Table transcription. All right, well, I will figure that out in a minute. But what we're looking for is the ability to turn our transcription on for everything we do. Start transcription. Thanks, Carl. That's what I was looking for. Start transcription. So there's a couple things I would suggest, not process. I can't talk and type. So start transcription, I would suggest if you're not going to enable this globally at the GPO level, which tomorrow, you should all go and do this tomorrow. Turn this on. So what this is going to do is it is going to start echoing. So here, it's going to put it here in this local. This is the default. You can also put it somewhere else if you want. Always store these. So these are just text files. Do not store these on a UNC path. Save them locally. Bad things will happen if your UNC path is not available. Meaning your transcription PowerShell will just kind of stutter because it's trying to save something to a path that's not there. So save this locally, whether you want to save it to the default or Don't do this. This is bad. This is the first thing that bad people look for. So don't do this. Security through obscurity. Anyway, so what it's going to do is everything that we have started typing out, and anything that we type, anything that comes out to the screen is going to get logged to this location. So let's take a look at this here. So it's starting transcription time. Who's running, who's running it, who opened it, who the current logged on user is. So some good information here about the machine. Transcription is starting, and we can see here. There's my command get processed like first 10, and then what got piped out to the screen. So maybe ask yourself, well, why is this important? Well, one, if you have an expensive tool like a Splunk or LogLogic or something, you can start sending these text files out to Splunk and start letting Splunk kind of start digesting these, or use some kind of AI machine learning algorithm to start kind of detecting anomalous PowerShell processes that are start running. If you have a scheduled task that's, or if you have a machine that starts having PowerShell scripts being ran at midnight, but you don't work at midnight and you don't have any scheduled tasks that are supposed to do anything, that might start being a red flag that something wonky is going on here. So what I suggest you do is turn this on. This is all, you can all set this via GPO on your Windows machines. Tell it to go somewhere, and then if you have a SIM that can come through and suck these up on a basis, come and copy these. If you don't, just create a scheduled task that can copy these to a UNC path for you. You can always write a PowerShell script to go through and start reading and start kind of detecting some of these anomalies that you have.
Hey James, you keep
Sean.
saying this, but what is a SIM?
What does SIM stand for? Security.
It's an event log monitor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it's one of those things. I just kind of keep thinking that people know what a SIM is. Yeah. So SIM, I keep using Splunk is the big one. Splunk, LogLogic, Datadog. It's kind of an aggregator for reading event logs. Would be a good way.
It's
to mention that.
Yeah.
Security information and event management. It's a log.
Yeah.
You
security, that's it.
Log aggregator.
You pump your logs to it. It grabs them and then usually correlates them into some way that you can parse them and read them and search them.
Yeah, I know in the Azure space it's called log analytics.
It's it's Microsoft Defender for cloud apps now.
Oh, they keep changing things.
It's Sentinel, right?
Yeah, Sentinel, and anyway, I dropped a link to the article about how to set it up in Azure. I just want to make sure people knew what you meant when you said SIM.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. So like I said, turn this on via GPO. It will start running in the background. Very minimal overhead as far as actually running this on your production system. And again, it has some kind of a scheduled task to ship this off somewhere. It's not going to do you any good if you have all these log files that are just sitting there. No one's actually going to be looking for them. So it will kind of add on to itself. Once it gets to a certain point, it will start a new one. You see here, I've ran the command stop transcription. So if I were to run start again, I will get a new text file. So we can see here we have date, time. We have dates and a timestamp on here. So this is more kind of, as I said, this is more of our defense. If you have this turned on, so first off, let's kind of get this straight. If a bad attacker is in your environment, you're not going to stop them very easily. They're going to go do the things that whatever it is they're going to do, and you're going to be caught picking up the pieces after the fact. It's a whole lot easier to go back and fix things when you know what they have done, and you can know what they've done when you have transcription turned on, because you can look at all the commands that they have ran. One of the biggest telltale signs, if you start seeing get 80 user ran a lot on a lot of your servers, a lot of your workstations, that might be an indication that there's a bad attacker running, or a bad attacker that has gained access to that system, because they're trying to find out who is in who's in different security groups, so they can start working their way up the chain. Yeah. So like I said, you really can't stop someone once they've started, but picking up the pieces is a whole lot easier. Is a whole lot easier when you know what they've done. All right, and then the next little bit of tips and tricks and security code that we have is my favorite piece of PowerShell, and that is PowerShell Remoting. Now, I know I talked about this a little bit last year, so this is definitely not near in depth as what we talked about last time. But we're talking about some of the things. So because remoting is such a useful tool, being able to go from my machine to hundreds of machines at the same time, that is also why the bad guys like to use it as well. Okay. Yes. See here. So the first thing we need to do, if you don't already have remoting installed or enabled, you can do this. Please do this via GPO. Don't try to go to all your machines. Please do this via GPO, but do not go. If you only have a few machines, or you have just a workstation, one-off you're working on, it's enable PS remoting, or you can do WinRM QC. These do the exact same things. What this does, this enables the WinRM listener. It registers registers the listeners and the IP addresses that it's listening from. Some of the things that you can do inside of your host file here is, so by default, the IP address that's allowed to connect to your machine is star.star. If you want to start restricting that down, you can restrict it to a specific subnet. I could do this. If you were on some kind of VPN or however you have your server subnetted. So this would be the IP address that you're coming from. So like where I worked when it's with the government, we all sat on the same floor. So they just had our entire floor on a specific subnet, and then we restricted our servers where you had to be sitting on the 5th floor of the IT building. Otherwise, you couldn't remote into any server from anywhere else. That was kind of our give and take that we had with cybersecurity department is, hey, let's open it, but we'll restrict the access to only, this floor inside of our building. So that kind of helped make them. So that will kind of help make them kind of relieved a little bit. What's it? The default is star.star. So when we talk about remoting, there's a couple slight differences between the two. So we have Windows PowerShell and PowerShell. So you have the standard, or legacy is not the right word. The way we've always done things uses the WinRM protocol, port 5985 for HTTP and 5986 for HTTPS requests. Said these run off the WinRM protocol. WinRM has been around for a very long time. There's a fantastic chapter in Shell of an Idea, I guess kind of between Don and Snover, about why WinRM was chosen over SSH. And it was because at the time, WinRM was still relatively new, so that's where the big new shiny things that Microsoft was pushing really hard, and because Linux servers use SSH, and we were not Linux. So that's why WinRM was chosen. There were bigger battles. So there were bigger battles to be fought as far as getting PowerShell shipped out the door. So the compromise was made to use the WinRM protocol, and it works just fine. Yes, so as Steven said, Don means Don Jones, and Snover equals, means Jeffrey Snover. So we can use remote. We have two different commands here. That we can use with remoting. The first one is enter PS session. This is a one-to-one. I can do the computer name. I'm going to come in here to one of my servers, and I can also pass a credential flag. So it's important to note that the credentials that you're logged in currently as, I'm logged in here as Bob. So Bob's credentials are the ones that are going to be passed across. If I want to put something else, then I would use the credential flag. I've done the really bad thing. I've logged in as a domain admin into a workstation. Obviously something that we shouldn't be doing, but that's how my lab is set up. We can also, and then anything here inside the script block is what's going to get ran. It's not right. I can't. You get service bits. I love picking on the bit service. I can't spell script block. Okay. Oh, it is too late at night. So enter PS session here. Again, one-to-one. We can see down here at the bottom, I have brackets around server 1. You can see here I am for run the hostname command. I'm here on server 1, and anything I do, anything that I do is actually being ran on services singular, is being ran on that local machine. Now, this is great if you are running core boxes on a lot of your machines, which I kind of hope you are at this point. If if your team is allowing you to do that. So again, it's still a one-to-one interaction. It's the same thing as me sitting down at a keyboard. When you use exit to get out of this. Now we can do, this is probably my favorite command in PowerShell. Computer name. The computer name parameter accepts an array of objects, so we can do quite a few things here. We can separate them with a comma. One thing, my favorite thing to do is I named all my SCCM servers the same with the same prefix. So I would do something like, I would do as get, I think it's brackets, get AD computer dash filter name like, this is not going to work because I'm missing parentheses and stuff different places, but you could do something like this. So you can get AD computer filter name like SCCM. This got all my SCCM servers. And then we just give it a script block, and everything inside these squiggly brackets will get ran. Like so. Boom. Now I've ran this on 2 different machines. You'll notice that just because I put these in this order, server 1 and server 2, that does not mean that is the order that information is going to come back out of. It's just, it spits it out to the screen just as fast as it gets it. Now, there's that. Let's talk about PowerPoint. Here we go. So starting with PowerShell 7, when it came out, we can now do remoting over SSH. Makes a lot of people happy. Hey, thanks, Kevin. Makes a lot of people happy because, again, no one has a problem with SSH. It's been around forever. So port 22 is perfectly fine. I go to some cybersecurity analyst. I'm like, hey, I need to open up port 5985 for PowerShell remoting. They're like, what? What are you trying to do? Anyway, so port 22 uses SSH for its remoting, and it works great. So there are a couple ways to install or get remoting here. So I already have all this set up, so I'm not gonna run through all this again. This is available in the GitHub repo, and this is an exact copy and paste of Thomas. I can never pronounce Thomas' last name. He lives over in the UK somewhere. He has a fantastic blog on how to enable PowerShell remoting on Windows 7 or PowerShell 7 devices. Yes, what Stevie said. So what we have to install the client and the server for SSH, restart the service, all those good things. Now, there's a couple of differences that we need to take note of. And that is, if you want to use if you use WinRM, it uses the computer name parameter. And if you want to use SSH, it uses the host name, and that is the only difference between the two. They didn't ask my opinion when they were putting this out, and I didn't know anything about open source and all this came out, so I didn't get a chance to voice my opinion because I didn't understand what the process was like. But if I do enter PS session, computer name, server 1, what this means is this means use WinRM, right? If I do host name, this means use SSH. I really wish that it was more of a flag type thing. Like, don't be confused with this. This use SSL flag is not SSH. This means use the HTTPS protocol for remoting. But same thing, do the host name here, server 01. Again, I can pass a credential flag if I wanted to, but I'm not, because I'm going to pass Bob. If it's your first time connecting, you're going to get the thing that says, do you want to accept the SHA fingerprint? And you're going to say yes. You also have to spell your server names correctly. There we go. Now, as I was thinking about letting me in, there we go. Now we can see I'm here on server 01. So you can use this for invoke command as well. But kind of the last little piece here that I'm going to leave you with is using SSH. I know someone said they're a Linux admin besides Steven. I think it was Brad. Now my DNS is not great. Or it's non-existent. So that's why I have to use an IP address here. But I'm now on a Ubuntu server. Yeah, so I'm now remoted into a Ubuntu server from my Windows 11 box using SSH. So we can do this. Now there are step-by-step directions on how to go do all this. It's pretty much the exact same thing here that we have just in the Linux way, or the fun way is if you just do, and here's the blog. This whole thing is up in GitHub as well, so you don't have to take screenshots or anything. Install module name Microsoft PowerShell Remoting Tools, and then you run the command enable SSH remoting, and it does everything for you. You don't have to go and edit your host files. You don't have to edit your subsystem process file and all that other good stuff. Just run these two commands. This works for Windows and Linux. So this works on Windows machines and Linux. I believe it works on Mac as well. I don't have a Mac to test it on, but I'm pretty sure it works there as well. And my last piece of advice is, when you have remoting enabled, please make sure you're using dedicated system account credentials, such as a -sys or -admin -da something. Please don't be using your regular credentials to remote in and do work on machines.
So that's what I was going to ask you about. When you connected with SSH over to the Windows box and it was asking for the password, what password were you typing in for that user account?
For super admin here.
No, before when you were Bob on 714, I think.
So Bob is just a domain admin, so I just typed in Bob's password.
So you're still passing Windows or AD credentials? Just okay.
Yeah. Another quick note is that when you are on the when you're connecting to Windows machines, you can use the credential flag. When you're connecting to Linux machines, you need to use this username flag. Yes, John. Normally, I don't have anything about event logging right now because my presentation is limited to an hour, and this is as far as I've ever gotten. But there is event logging and module transcription that I keep trying to get into, but every time I've given this presentation, it's been a 45-minute presentation. I've always run out of time.
It's module logging and script block logging, where you can get detailed event logs, cross-platform, detailed logs of every command that was run on the system. And this is a great way for investigating malware, because if the malware is using obfuscation, the code actually has to be deobfuscated before it's run, and it's the deobfuscated code that shows up in the logs.
Yeah, it's also a good call out that the sim is a good reminder to see what has happened and not what has actually happened. So unless you're taking those event logs and shipping them off somewhere, you're not going to be able to see that deobfuscated code and how it actually ran and executed.
Right.
All right, yeah. So that's all I have.
James, this is really useful stuff. Thank you for sharing with us. Before we wrap up here, anybody have any questions they want to ask from James? I saw someone answer. I saw David was asking if the password for SSH connections is passed in the clear, and one of the guys had answered that it's not. Just wanted to confirm that.
Passwords are not passed in clear text ever. In the the WinRM instance, they're passed as credential objects, and like Brad said, they're not passed into clear when using SSH.
So I've also done presentations in the past on some of these topics, and I know that James has just started to scratch the surface. This is a very deep topic. Microsoft has built a number of tools in to help you configure environments in quite a number of different ways. And as Sean just started to allude to, script block logging, module logging, there's a lot of other features you can turn on to really control and see what's happening in your PowerShell environment. There's also some built-in script block logging from Microsoft by default to pick up some very weird sort of anomalies. And there's some searches you can do in your event logs to look for that stuff. So this is certainly not a be-all and end-all of everything involved with securing your environment. It's really just sort of the baby steps to get going. But the stuff that James pointed out here really is a fantastic start to get yourself and your environment in a much better shape. James, I want to say thanks for helping us out tonight and sharing some of this topic with us. If you're watching at home, I would like to remind everybody, come back and join us in person. The Research Triangle PowerShell User Group meets every first and third Wednesday, and we'd love for you to be part of the live audience that gets to ask the questions of our speakers. Phil, anything you want to add before we wrap this guy up?
No, we'll just see you in 2 weeks. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Well, Phil might be there next week.
Not next week.
Inside joke for the people who came early.
Don't forget to grab your tickets for the PowerShell Summit, April 8th to the 11th.
Good plug. Good plug.
Yeah. And if you like what you've seen, check out our YouTube channel, which you're probably watching this on. We have about 150 videos on all things PowerShell, so check us out. We'd love to see you at the next time, at the next one. Until next time, thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.